Namaste. This is Parama Karuna Devi, and this is the channel of the Jagannath Vallabha Vedic Research Center. I'm going to present you the recording of the video meeting, the Zoom satsang that we had about the misconceptions about Hinduism. Now the video is longer than expected, and we were not able to explore all the details of the various issues. So I am planning to prepare a series of shorter presentations analyzing each specific issue in every video clip. So please, let's keep in touch. Subscribe to the channel. If you have any information, any question, any objection, any observation, you please write to our email, to the email of the research center, and I will try to answer to everyone. Thank you. Namaste. To appear and disappear.
Oh yes, because I think there's a bandwidth problem here.
Okay.
It's not getting two people together.
The sound is good enough, even if you're not so near to the microphone. Okay.
Yeah, I stopped my video because we are having dinner together with listening to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's only 9:30 here, so we are late today for dinner. So, but we will continue with your discourse and also simultaneously have dinner. So, yeah. So I'll turn off my video for some time.
Sure, no problem. Please feel free to say anything if you like. Yes. I was thinking this evening to talk about the misconceptions about Hinduism.
Yes.
Because I think there's more, and if also the people who participate, they can suggest any more, then it's welcome.
Yes. I will be there all the time, and I will come back on video after I finish this.
Excellent. So,
not take long, yeah.
Bon appetit. Enjoy your meal.
Thank you.
Jai.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's do the screen sharing. Share screen. Here it is. Okay. So, I am screen sharing. Let's see if someone else will come in.
Okay.
Devala said he would come.
Hanji.
Maybe Devashraya will come. Okay. Annika is still traveling. She wanted to be there, but she said that she will try to be there.
Yes.
Devala. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult traveling.
Jai Devalaji. Namaste. Jai Jagannath. Welcome. Okay, so I think we can start. Oh, Deva. One sec. Devashaya is saying something. One sec. Okay. He cannot come. Okay, good. So just leave it. So let's see if Annika can come. Otherwise, we can start anyway. So if you, as you can see from the screen, we have some misconceptions already. I decided that this meeting we can talk about the common misconceptions about Hinduism. And as I was saying before to Rakeshji, if anyone wants to add something, we can do on chat, or we can do in any other way at any time. So we can see this is a leaflet circulated by the Joshua Project. And this already tells us something. So these are some of the most popular misconceptions. But we will examine them one by one. So the first one is pretty basic. Some people confuse Hindu with Hindi and Indian. And some people also confuse religion, community, ethnic tradition, family lineage, race, nationality, and language, which are obviously different things. Because when someone converts, for example, if someone who was born a Hindu converts to Christianity, he's not a Hindu anymore. If we continue considering him a Hindu, that will be a big problem, because we'll have two types of behaviors. One, they will get angry. Or if they are more clever, they will exploit the situation. So if they are clever and devious enough, they will try to exploit the situation to create as many problems as possible. So we can, the same thing applies to, for example, to Islam and Judaism. Sometimes, especially in the West, people, confuse religion with race. And Islam especially, they're taking full advantage of this. So, but we should not go on the same road. Other two big misconceptions are about orthodoxy and fundamentalism. Now, the actual meaning of the word orthodoxy is coming from the ancient Greek, and it means correct following. So orthodoxy is actually when someone is correctly, faithfully following the original teachings, specifically the scriptures, the original scriptures. So many people think that orthodoxy means dogmatic, intolerant, rigid, but that is not a fact, because it depends what the scriptures say. Now in Hinduism, the Shastra is not dogmatic and is not doesn't have dogma or commandments. So the actual Hindu orthodoxy should not be comparable to the Abrahamic orthodoxy. Same thing with fundamentalism. So when we speak about fundamentalism, the origin of the word comes from fundamentals. So a fundamentalist is someone who is actually following and applying the fundamentals of their ideology. And again, this is a matter of the value, the contents of the ideology. Because we can say if someone is, a fundamentalist of honesty, it means it will be extremely honest. Because it is a fundamental the principles of honesty. And the same thing we have to see which are the fundamental principles that someone is applying. And another big thing is the difference between Shastra Praman and Lokika Shraddha. Shastra Praman is what is actually presented in the Shastra, while the Lokika Shraddha is what the popular belief. So what people generally think, but is not confirmed and contained in the Shastra. Another one, it is a famous one, the story of the Aryan invasion or migration, in which the idea is the Aryan is the Caucasian race. So Nietzsche described the Aryans as blonde beasts of prey. It's like, wow. So this is what, the right-wing activists think that Aryanism is. This is why they picked up the swastika and all this stuff. They still carry on the swastika. So they're very confused and they still think that Aryan is a race, when we actually know it's not the fact. We have plenty of information in this regard. We cannot discuss it in this particular meeting because it will take more than one meeting. But okay. Then another one is the idea that the Indus-Saraswati Valley civilization was different from the Vedic civilization. This is also connected to the Aryan invasion theory, while actually we know that they're the same civilization. But it was detached mostly because at the borders of the ancient Bharatavarsha, Aryavarsha, there were the Valika kingdoms. Valika means external, frontier, border. And these were, in many cases, were small kingdoms of fallen Kshatriyas who did not want to follow the Vedic system. So they had the same race, the same general culture, but they did not follow strictly the Arya civilization. So this is why we can find that these some of these Balika kingdoms were not exactly vegetarian. And there were several things. The Balika kingdoms are described in Mahabharata at length. There are several passages, especially one passage in which all the earth kingdoms were described. Okay, let's go on. This is another big misconception. It's the hereditary untouchability and hereditary social position in the Varna system. And we know that, for example, in the United States, especially in California, they're having a big problem now. They're fighting back. And the idea that the caste system is not the Varna system has become extremely clear to many people, especially many Hindus in the United States, which is a good idea. Another thing is, misconception is that the higher the Varna, the less duties or more duties and vice versa. Now, the point is that usually in the mainstream culture, we see that the higher the position, the more rights and the less duties. In the Vedic system of the Varnashama, the higher the position, it is the opposite. The more duties and the less rights. Because the more power, the more elevated someone has, the more duties they have, the more responsibility they have. Then this is again exactly the Vedic system of Varnas. Varna was based on race, color. Then we have a prejudice about whiteness and blackness. Unfortunately, there are some people in India who are still confused about this. We need to help because it's a very dangerous situation. Again, misconceptions about Hinduism that untouchability is like apartheid and is based on financial disadvantage. And the Dalits are the fifth caste, so they invented this fifth Varna. We can see sometimes in images, the pyramid of the five Varnas. I say, what, five Varnas? No, actually there are four only. So the idea of apartheid is based on race. Financial disadvantage doesn't exist in the Vedic system because nobody is getting paid except the Shudra. In the Vedic system, nobody is getting paid for their work except the Shudra. The Brahmana must always be poor, in the sense detached from possessions and income. So they get donations, but immediately they use these donations to distribute. So the three duties of the Brahmanas are to accept charity and to give charity, to perform, to study and to teach, and to perform their own religious duties and to help other people perform religious duties. So the fact that the Brahmanas are receiving charity or immediately giving it away means they're not going to keep it much. Then we have people don't know the process of Shuddhi, Prayaschitta, Vrata, and Diksha, because the hereditary social position can easily be corrected in the proper Vedic system that allows the possibility of Shuddhi, of purification, Prayaschitta, even if someone has fallen, has committed bad actions against the Dharma, they can still get purified. Then Vrata means they promise they will follow the Vedic principles of Dharma and Vidya, and then they can get their proper Diksha and be part of the higher Varnas even. This has been happening for hundreds and thousands of years, and it's still happening in some measure. There are also misconceptions around the idea of reservations based on census, which is a typical non-Vedic idea. The census is not a Vedic idea. It's actually opposed. It's very opposed to the idea of the Hindu Rashtra. Actually, the Vedic government system is simply about protecting the prajas, protecting the kingdom from aggression. So aggressions means violence, means immediate danger. The Vedic government doesn't try to control the people in their regular, normal life. So the idea of the castes and subcastes is a general scheduled caste, general backward caste, other backward caste, and scheduled tribes, which has totally nothing to do with the Varna system. Okay, then there is a general idea in the West that in the West, also in anti-Hindu groups, that Hinduism opposes the progress, individual and collective, doesn't give space to social mobility and personal evolution, which again is totally false, because in fact the Shastra condemn those people who don't make efforts to improve themselves. and regarding science and progress, we can see, for example, we have one here, this on Peter Dur, but we can get a lot of other examples of scientists in the actual, cutting edge of modern research that are very inspired by Vedic knowledge. There is another interesting thing that after the photons, now they discover the muons. So the muons are even more amazing than the photons. The photons are existing both as energy and mass at the same time. The muons are, even more strange. Another idea is that many people think, groups, if you go on internet, you'll find that India has slavery. So for example, we have here this map of this organization, the Statista organization, that shows that India has almost 18.5 million of slaves. Now, I never saw a slave market in India. Sorry. I've been there a long time, but I never saw a slave market. Now, the idea of bonded labor is not exactly the Hindu concept. We don't find that in the Shastra, because even the Shudras, who are usually attached to a family or an employer, and they live in the house of the employer, they're not sold. They're not separated from their family. And if they want, they can leave. In fact, the idea that in the Dharma Shastra, it is said that a Shudra should not leave his master when the master is in difficulties, bad situation, means that the Shudra had the possibility to leave, because otherwise there wouldn't be any reason, any sense in telling the Shudra, you should not leave your master. Because it is something that you cannot do. It's not a matter of choice if you should do it or not. But this, fortunately, this is not the only map that is circulating, because, like, for example, here we find another map from another source, and we see that is quite different. So practically speaking, we have the slave density of India in this map is the same like in Italy and Spain, which, like, okay, they're not particularly famous for slavery. And the real bad ones are the Islamic countries, where actually slavery is totally approved. Anyway, we go on. Then another misconception is some people say that Hinduism has no rules, and some people say that it has too many rules, which is a typical demonstration that neither is a fact. Because sometimes when you discuss on social media, you get all sorts of accusations from different people, and each accusation is opposite than the other. So some people will say that you're a fascist, and the other will say you're a communist. Someone will say that you're a fanatic religious, and someone else is saying you're an atheist. We say, okay. So then let's go. Another misconception is that Hinduism is based on religious lineages, matters, and schools of thought in a sectarian matter, in a sectarian sense, which is absolutely not the case, because Hinduism is very open. Anyone can start a religious lineage. So there is no particular opposition between the various perspectives. Then it's difficult for people to understand the concept of ashram in the context of varnashrama dharma, because when they hear the word ashram, they think about a place where only celibate people go and say, like, brahmacharis. They're studying, they practice yoga, they do some spiritual life, religious life. But what is the grihastha ashram? What is the vanaprastha ashram? What is the sannyasa ashram? Means there is some misconception there. Up to here, everything is clear. Any question, any objection? Not really. Okay. So,
Mataji,
yes.
I think Mr. Rakesh is asking a question. Mataji.
Oh, I didn't see. Let me see. Chat one. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm running the slides. See the slides here. No, let me see. Stop share. And again. Try again. And again, and again, and again. Now? Can you see them now? Virabhadra.
There, yes.
I can see it, Mataji.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mataji.
Guys, you should tell me, you should stop me, because I'm going on like a train, like, okay, I think everybody's watching. Anyway, the slides, we can go quickly. So, because, there will be Orthodox, Shastra Praman, Lokika Shraddha, Aryan invasion, and this, and that, and this, and that, and we have more. Yeah, this is the Hans-Peter Durer, and this is the map I was talking about. So, where we see India is, really deep red, and this is the other map by another source that shows that India is not. Where are the slaves in India? There's no slaves. Okay. Okay, the ashram. Okay. Then another misconception is the Hinduism is a recent religion founded in 1500 BCE. And as a consequence, there is a distinction between Vedic period, Puranic period, and different periods. But these divisions are actually being created by the colonial Indology based on the Aryan invasion theory, because in 1500 BCE, they say that the blonde Aryans came from the Caucasus and started the Vedic age. Not really, actually. In 1500 BCE, Kali Yuga sort of started. So it was not exactly Vedic age. Then other people think that Hinduism started from Buddhism, which is also not exactly not true, because they see that Buddhism is similar to Hinduism, so they think that it came from. Or it is opposed to tribal religions. Then another idea is that what is Sanatana Dharma? People think that because it's Sanatana Dharma, it's Sanatana, they think that Dharma cannot be destroyed. So, but we have this famous quote, Dharma Rakshati Rakshita. that Dharma will protect those who protect the Dharma, and the other part of the quote is that Dharma will destroy those who try to destroy the Dharma. So Dharma can be destroyed temporarily. It cannot be destroyed forever, but even if it Sanatana, it means that it is eternal and universal in the sense that it is inscribed in the hearts of all human beings. It's a natural Dharma. Sanatana Dharma because it's a natural Dharma. But the presence of a dharmic system in society can very easily be destroyed. So in this sense, Dharma can be destroyed. We can have a problem even in places where we consider the Dharma to be always there, like in holy places and everything, it can go down. Then this comes to the idea of change and adaptation of the fundamental principles to different circumstances. Some people think that Sanatana Dharma cannot change, but in fact, this is a misconception because the fundamental principles will not change. But there will be a lot of adaptation possible. For example, we have Adi Shankar, who appeared probably around 15 BCE, who made a big revolution in the social system of Hinduism. Adi Shankar introduced the idea of the mats, introduced the idea of sannyasis teaching. You know, he organized the Kumbh Melas. He organized big temples, worshipping big temples. Before, there were not, these were still present, but they were not very, very widespread. So it can change and adapt, but the fundamental principles of Dharma and Vidya will remain the same. Then we have another idea. Many people make a difference between religion and spirituality because they keep these Abrahamic religions as a model of religion. They think that all religions must conform to those parameters of Abrahamic religions. So we get a lot of atheists that are angry with Abrahamic religions. They also get angry with Hinduism. And unfortunately, we have some Hindu activists who react in the wrong way. Instead of explaining why Hinduism is not like Abrahamic religions, they, get angry, they, fight back or whatever. And we need to clarify that there is no difference in Hinduism between religion and spirituality. Because in general, the general idea of religion based on the Abrahamic parameters is that the religion is something they tell you to do. Something that comes from a religious authority that decided you have to believe this, you have to do this, you have to follow this. While spirituality means something that you feel inside, something that you experience personally, individually, so you can apply and experiment yourself. While religion is simply some social construct, social and political construct that you have to follow. And this has opened the door to many new age ideas, because many people from the famous new age movement started with the idea of getting some good teachings from Hinduism and then using them in their own systems. So we came out with the commercialization of spirituality that has created a lot of damage, and now Hinduism has to deal with it. Because, for example, we find, for example, in the field of yoga, we have everything and more. Then we have a major misconception is about the sacred cows versus the pigs and dietary laws, and eating meat, fish, and other traditional Indian foods. So, you know, eating is a major part of people's lives, because people eat at least, you know, usually at least twice a day. You know, some people 3 or 4, you know, some people more. But we need to understand, we need to explain that Hinduism considers the cow as a mother. So the fact of not eating the cows is not like the not eating the pigs, because the pigs are considered impure and the cows are considered pure. It's exactly the opposite. So the idea that we don't eat the cows because we respect the cows like mothers. And in most Hindu families in rural India, the cow is a member of the family. So this is a big misconception. Then another misconception is that many people have confused ideas about Hinduism in respect with Parsism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and whatever. They don't really know what is the difference. And another one is because people think that because all Indians are Hindus, which is also not true, but it's okay. So whatever bad things happen in India, it is because of Hinduism. So if they see a lot of rape going on, you know, okay, yeah, because Hinduism, you know, raping is okay. Not exactly. Then, you know, we have, for example, a typical example of Jawaharlal Nehru, who was not exactly a Hindu. He said he was Hindu merely by accident. So he was, you know, his name was Pandit. So we can see the situation. Another idea is that Indians remain Hindus even when they convert to other religions, which is, we already saw that it is a dangerous idea. And exactly opposite, we have the idea that there is no religious freedom, or the idea that there is too much religious freedom. There is, conversions are not possible, proselytism is not possible, or it should not be done, and there should be a state religion. In the Vedic system, the state is not concerned about the religion, but about protecting the people and keeping the dharma, protecting the dharma, not protecting the religion. This is another problem. People confuse dharma with religion. Okay, then again, this is a general idea that many people have, especially in the West, that Hinduism is connected with poverty, slums, pavement dwellers, famine, no social assistance, no charity or compassion or solidarity. While in fact, we have, in Hinduism, we have exactly the opposite principles. We have, for example, the Atiti Seva, the Daridra Narayan idea, service to elders. So the Shudras are always taken care of by the employer, even when the Shudras cannot work, are not unable to work. This is a very clear teaching for the employers. So the Daridra Narayan, sometimes these ISKCON people, they get very, very agitated about this idea. But the basic concept is that we see Narayan as the Paramatma, even in the poor people. So when we take care of the poor people, we respect the poor people, we respect the Paramatma in their hearts. We don't say that Narayan has become poor, like the ISKCON people say. No, it's not that idea. We see Narayan in the hearts of everyone. Like Bhagavad Gita is saying, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihasini, Sunicheva Swapakacha, Pandita Samadarshina. Okay, then we have another idea is that Hinduism requires people to be fatalistic, irresponsible, hypocrites, lazy, weak, causes corruption in public offices and government, politics, bureaucracy, magistracy, all these things, which is not a fact. Also, Hinduism does not depend more laws and more control of government and police over private life. That is not there in the Shastra. Also, it does not teach disregard for hygiene, cleanliness, or purity. In fact, it's exactly the opposite, sometimes even too much. And it doesn't teach disrespect towards nature, resources, etc. Unfortunately, we see, for example, India has become extremely polluted in the last 20 years, 25, 30 years. But that is not because of Hinduism. In the same way, we can easily demonstrate that Hinduism is not the cause of poverty, because for thousands of years, India was the richest region on the planet. Everybody wanted to go to India because it was so rich, so wealthy. So, that was because of Hinduism. Then when Hindus started to lose their power, then poverty came. And they were not so able to defend themselves from invasions and aggressions, so they were repeatedly robbed and left in a very bad situation. And the pollution actually is only the result of the non-sustainable industrial development. Then another misconception is that non-violence means not fighting or not killing. And at the opposite end of the misconception is that it requires physical punishment or death penalty, which is also not a fact. So there are lots of other misconceptions around the idea of democracy versus monarchy, about the system of taxation and legislation, about the idea of secularism. So these are all big misconceptions that we need to work on. Then we have, the role of Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, which is not clear at all in the minds of most people. Mostly the Indology confusion comes from the assimilation of the Vedic system with the Parsi system, with the Zoroaster and the Zend-Avesta and everything. In that tradition, in that social pattern, the priests were actually not priests; they were bards. Like we see in the Indo-European groups that left India to go somewhere else, Some became the Parsis, some became the North Europeans, they went around. The priest was actually only in the service of the king. The bard is supposed to glorify the king, to sing the glories of the king. That's a bard, that's not a Brahmana. A Brahmana is actually above the king, it's not below the king, which is extremely important. Then the Shudras, also there is a lot of confusion about the Shudras. Who are the Shudras actually? And what to speak of the confusions about the Vaishyas, because practically nobody knows what the Vaishya is. Because anybody who makes money, that's a Vaishya. No, it's not. Vaishyas are entrepreneurs in the sense that they develop wealth and prosperity by using the raw resources and digesting them like the stomach of the Virat Purusha, and then distributing them to the entire social body. So a Vaishya employs farm laborers, but farm laborers are not Vaishyas, they're Shudras. So we see, for example, the only image that I found on internet about the four Varnas, the ISKCON version, where they show that the Vaishya is tilling the field with the cow, with the ox. But that would be, Mose would be a Shudra working for the Vaishya. The Vaishya would organize the agricultural work. He's the one who's an expert, one who's managing the resources, and then the surplus that is not required for his a large family independence, he keeps some for the next agricultural, for sowing the fields, and then he gives a percentage to the king as taxes, and the king distributes to all those who are in need. And then with the surplus, the Vaishya, still the surplus should be there. So it's not that the king is taking, they have to pay taxes 3 times every time they do something. So tax to the king was not fixed. It depended on several factors. But that was normal until, even in the West, like for example, in the USA, why the United States prospered so much? Because until before the Second World War, the percentage of people who were paying taxes in the United States were about 3%. Nobody, only very few people were actually paying taxes. People were actually had a lot of money, and they wanted to contribute to the government, to society. So we also have to explain better about the role of king and the king's enlarged family, because the king was not someone who was sitting on the chair and not doing anything. Both the king and his family were totally dedicated to the service of the project. So they were ready every moment to sacrifice everything for the benefit of the project. So this type of understanding will help us, for example, to have a different perspective on the episode in the Mahabharata when Yudhishthira plays the game of dice. Lots of people criticize Yudhishthira, saying that, hey, you see, Yudhishthira was such a bad person was a villain, such a bad person. He gambled the kingdom. He gambled his family. He was a gambler. No, Yudhishthira wanted to avoid the war. And he knew that Duryodhana would not stop until he had the kingdom. So he proposed a challenge, which is gambling in this sense. Gambling is very much like a duel, So the two kshatriyas, they challenge each other, and someone wins and someone loses. So, if Yudhishthira was the winner, Duryodhana would have been, forced to calm down and, step back. Otherwise, he was just losing something himself. He was not sacrificing millions of lives in a war. So he was sacrificing himself and his family for the benefit of the project. Then again, there is another big idea in the Gotra, Jati, and Kula. The idea that someone belongs to a Kula or a Gotra not just for birth, but also for adoption. So the DNA doesn't have much to do with it. So, for example, we have the idea of the Guru Kula. The Kula, or lineage, is a group of people who share the same values, not someone who shares the same DNA. Because same DNA, that doesn't mean much. DNA has a different idea. There is a component in DNA, but that's not so simplistic. It's not that because someone is born in a Brahmana family that automatically means he must be a Brahmana, because it's like a breed like dogs or animals. It doesn't happen like that. And unfortunately, this idea of the birth prejudice comes from the same Parsi concept, the Zarathustra concept of clan. These Caucasians, the Huns came in to settle in India, and they were coming from a Parsi or, non-Aryan background. So in this non-Aryan background, they had this idea of a clan, which we can see still in later times in the Indo-European peoples, especially in Europe. They had a very strong concept of clan and family, which was seriously based on birth, on blood, while the system, Vedic system, was not based on blood. So then we have another point. What is the Rashtra? What is the Rashtra? What is the kingdom? What is the it's called kingdom, but there were also democracies, not necessarily a king, but and then what is the meaning of nationalism in Hinduism? What is the real meaning? Then other points that deserve to be examined closely are the influence of Islam and the Victorian British Raj in the development, in the formation of Indian society. And in later times, after the British Raj went away, there was a big influence due to the Soviet alliance in the Cold War. Socialism and Marxism and the whole bunch of things. And what is happening today, we have the influence of the banksters. the bank gangsters. And we can go on this, but not here. Then some people think that Hinduism is a fascist type or Nazi type of ideology. So they make the connection with Hitler, the swastika, and all these things. And the famous Savitri Devi, who declared Hitler was an avatar of Vishnu. Okay. Not really. So then, okay, religion or ideology or opinion, then of course the result is the disaster. Another misconception is that Hinduism is persecuting Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and everyone. Especially, this is the reason why there are no Buddhists in the region. No, not really. We have to go and see the history to actually understand how it's working. Then another problem of the cultural superimposition with the Abrahamic perspective and parameters is the divide of science versus religion. There is not sufficient understanding about this different types of technology, of Vedic technology compared to the present time, a little obsolete already, the mechanistic science, which is, the Vedic science was a totally different thing. But it was more valuable than mechanistic science. There was also mechanistic science, but it was not considered so important. Then some people think that Hinduism needs scientific, academic, or historical validation. So they are, making a lot of effort in that direction. Then some people think that Hinduism is accurately portrayed in Bollywood-type mythological productions. So we have all these serials and stuff and dancing around and, well, not exactly. Some people think that Hinduism is accurately portrayed in academic colonial Indology. So they keep making references to the colonial Indology as if it was an actual authority on Hinduism. Then another very widespread idea is the polytheism. Now I saw some, got some question on Quora about the Charlie Hebdomadaire, which has published something to mock Hinduism by taking advantage of the COVID crisis. So the strip was saying, 330 million gods and not one is able to make oxygen. So I replied, well, a bit silly because Vayu makes plenty of oxygen. Now, the point is that people pity that the people are not able to take it from the air. But that's not Vayu's fault. So, that is another, the point is that the Shastras explain very clearly that all these forms of God, the devas, they are not different gods. They're not competition gods, one opposed to the other, or separated one from the others. They're all aspects. They're all personalities of the same God. So in this way, we have the mainstream academia that is creating a lot of definitions that are very misleading. Polytheism is one of these misleading ideas. Henotheism also is another because, They told him, no, not really, because we have Brahman, and then all the devas are manifested. We have the avatars of Vishnu, we have the manifestations of the devas and everything. So they invented this idea of henotheism, in which henotheism is supposed to be one supreme god and lots of minor gods. But this is also not the correct explanation in Hinduism. While on the other side, we have this misleading idea that Abrahamic religions are monotheism, which is not true. They should be defined better as monolatry, means that only one type of worship is allowed. Hinduism is a real monotheism because they all is one. So you can't find more monotheism than that. God is the sum total of existence. This is a real monotheism. Abrahamic religions say there is one true God and the other gods are false. If God is omnipresent, it's not possible there is something that is not God. So this idea, the confused idea that Abrahamic religions have are actually developed. They actually developed in a particular historical period after Alexander tried to conquer India and went back. And he went back with a lot of books. So in Alexandria, in Egypt, the Ptolemies started to put up a big university, big library, research center, and everything. And then they started to get these weird ideas. And these came to be known as Hellenistic civilization, Hellenistic culture. Before that time, in the West, nobody had the concept of omnipresent God. They didn't even know the decimal numbers. They didn't even know the decimal systems. They were going on with the 60 numeral system, and the Romans have these weird things. The mathematics came from with Alexander. The concepts of God as spirit, transcendental spirit, eternal, universal, omnipresent, omnipotent, came with the Hellenistic civilization, because before they didn't have that kind of understanding. They didn't understand the concept of infinite. Unlimited was something that was not in the culture. So still the idea, the Abrahamic idea of monotheism is very confused. And in the same way, they're confused about the idea of soul and Atman. They don't understand what Atman is. They think soul is something that people have. So people are bodies and they have a soul, which is like totally misleading. Because when people say, okay, I'm a body, I have a soul, I don't know what this soul is. I don't know where it is. So if someone is asking me to sell my soul and get something back, some benefit, okay, I'll sell it. I don't even know what it is, where it is. Take it. Who cares? So that's a lot of confusion. Then another idea is sectarianism. Sectarianism is another big Abrahamic concept that is not existing in actual Hinduism, because Hinduism wants to reconcile different approaches. So the absolute truth in Hinduism is all-inclusive, while the absolute concept of absolute truth in Abrahamic and post-Abrahamic ideologies is one truth that destroys all other truths. The best truth that defeats all the others. This has nothing to do with the Vedic system. We have debates in which the people who make the philosophical debate can defeat the opponent, but they don't defeat their truth. They should be able to reconcile all truths in one great picture. So this is why the classical perspectives in Hinduism are called darshanas, because darshana means seeing something from a different perspective. But the thing that you see is always the same. It's not that you see something different. You see the same thing, but from a different perspective. But that is not sectarianism. Okay, then another misconception is that Hinduism is the cause of no education, no schooling, and illiteracy and ignorance. But we know that in ancient times there were lots of universities. There was a lot of knowledge, a lot of, schooling was very good, in fact. Especially because the schooling system was totally the individual responsibility of the teacher. Each teacher was totally independent and responsible for his students, which is the best. Another problem is that xenophobia and racism and blaming foreigners for all problems. That is not what the Hinduism is supposed to teach. Another huge misconception is that Hinduism is misogynistic by nature and thinks that women are inferior and must be controlled and owned. This is another big problem that we need to clarify. Again, connected to this idea is the idea that Hinduism supports violence against women, girls, widows, girl children, and girl fetuses even. And the idea that Hinduism only accepts arranged marriage and not love marriage. And that women should just breed and serve the in-laws, which is also another big problem. Then rape is normal, a bride must be a virgin. Only men can have religious roles, and usually it's celibate men. Goddesses are subordinate wives to male gods. They should just make their children. But we have different ideas. So another big problem is the connection between the idea of sati and the burning of widows, which is not a Hindu ritual, like some people think. Child marriage also is not required by Hinduism. So both of these problems, the burning of widows and the child marriage, started in parallel with the Islamic invasions, when women, after the husbands were killed, usually women were taken slaves or killed in very bad ways. So when the husbands had been killed on the battlefield, some women preferred to kill themselves than to fall in the hands of the bad guys. But that is not because Sati gave the example of burning herself, because the Sati, as the consort of Shiva, didn't burn herself because Shiva was dead. In fact, quite the opposite. When Shiva came to know that Sati had killed herself, he came, pretty angry. He came and, so it has nothing to do with Sati. Also, child marriage is the same thing, because according to Islamic law, one should not take the wife of someone else. So if the girls were married very young, they were married, so they could not be taken away and put in the harem of the Muslims, because, why not? So they were married, so, good Muslims, at least they were, trying to respect that. Unless, of course, they killed the husband, and that, is not a problem anymore. The problem solved. Okay, so then we have the concept that Hinduism is against nudity, against sexual pleasure, and it is supporting purda and the segregation of women, which is again, or Hinduism is against homosexuality, against lesbian and like that, which is also not a fact, against sense gratification in general. So there is a lot of controversy about alcohol, bang, opium, tobacco, tea, coffee, and even chocolate. Okay. Then another double-ended misconception is no importance to temples or too much importance to temples. Okay, that's the whole range of ideas. So temples are also a subject that we can investigate more. Same, no importance or against the deity worship. On the other opposite end, idolatry, which is another big thing to dig about. The need for reform of Hinduism, yeah, okay, but in which direction? So the best direction in which we need to reform Hinduism is very simple: to go back to the source, go back to the original Shastra. We don't need any, big brain to come out and invent some new ideas. The perfect idea is there already. We just need to read about it in the Shastra, which is something many people are feeling a little resistance to. Then some people even think that the name of Kali Yuga refers to Mother Kali. I had a very nice exchange with one not very intelligent guy who made a Photoshop image of Kalki avatar killing Mother Kali. Okay, so like, not exactly. So many people, especially Abrahamic preachers, they say that the Hinduism has bloodthirsty, cruel deities. They worship the devil. They worship the ghost and do a lot of animal and human sacrifices. Thanks to Indiana Jones, this idea has been circulating even more. So, yeah, we need to discuss more about this with general people. I'm doing as much as I can on Quora, but we need more work. Another misconception is that karma is a punishment. And we need to explain people about the difference between karma, vikarma, and akarma, which many people don't understand. So karma is actually the proper actions, the duty, which is somehow it didn't reach the popular mind, the popular understanding of people. So many, especially in Abrahamic cultures, they think that karma is an endless doom, so there is no forgiveness, no hope of liberation. it's not a fact. So, okay. Then many people think that reincarnation means entering the body of someone else. So, tomorrow evening I have a webinar in Italian language for an Italian group, specifically on karma and reincarnation, because there's a lot to explain there, to clarify a lot of ideas. Then we have a lot of misconceptions due to bad translations. And the difference of the concepts that may look similar, but they're not. For example, the Atman versus the soul, God versus Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. This avatar is often translated as incarnation, while incarnation in Christian theology has a totally different meaning. So incarnation is a Christian concept. It has nothing to do with Hinduism. Then Divya Katha is usually translated as mythology. So if we go and see the meaning of mythology in the dictionary, we see maybe we should not use that word. Then same, even worse, like Rishi is translated as seer, which is like some kind of psychic with the crystal ball, and I see what I see. No, this is not a Rishi. This is something else. Then Acharya is translated as pontiff, Sadhu as monk, Pujari or Ritvik are translated as priest, Vigraha is translated as idol, and Mat is translated as monastery or nunnery even. Like what? And sannyasa and brahmacharya are equated with the Catholic celibacy idea, which is very dangerous because they have a different idea about chastity and abstinence. Very different. Just to give you an idea, there have been many declarations from Catholic clergy, cardinals, even big people, saying that having sex with children is not even sex. It's just like scratching an itch. Why are you so disturbed? It's not even sex. Okay, so you get the idea what they think about brahmacharya. Not the same thing. So then we have to explain to people why sacred rivers, sacred plants, why Shivalingam, why Salagram Shila, because they don't understand. Most people don't understand. They have very confused idea. Then another thing is about the importance of astrology, palmistry, numerology, occult, and magic, which is connected with the devil worship and stuff. On Quora, sometimes I get people asking me, free horoscopes. I was born, my date of birth is when I will marry, when I will get a job, okay. And sometimes I even answer them. I can imagine that my answer was not what they were expecting. So, like when I get a job, when you go out and find one, So astrology has a meaning, but we should not overestimate it. It's not that, Hindus, because they're Hindus, they have to read the horoscope every day before they do, they go out of the house. There are some days that are more auspicious and more, the way things will be probably easier. But this is just like the weather forecast. There's nothing wrong in watching the weather forecast. But it's not that you're not going to do your job because of a bad weather. You have to go on and do it. So this is, another idea, that there's a lot of confusion about Tantra. And I'm planning to do some presentation making the difference between Tantra and Kama Sutra. You don't need to drag the Tantra, to improve your sex life. Kama Sutra is sufficient. It's already good enough. Kama is one of the four Purusharthas. So there's nothing wrong there. Tantra is not that. Tantra is a different thing. So people should understand that. So Tantra is strictly connected with Bhakti and Yoga. They're the same category of knowledge. It has nothing to do with, better couple relationships. Then some people even think that Bhakti was introduced into Hinduism by the Sufis, because there was no Bhakti before that. No, it's not a fact. In fact, it's the opposite. The Sufis got the Bhakti from India. We have a very big tradition of Bhakti. If you have seen my book, Why I Became a Hindu, you can get many examples that go back, centuries before the Sufis. Okay, next. Then this is another idea that I heard recently on Quora. Brahma is the God creator and Shiva is his enemy, trying to destroy the creation. So this idea comes from the Abrahamic side of the Gnostic tradition, where Yadalbaoth is the creator of this world, but he's a bad guy. So, okay, it's confused. Then another big misconception that has been circulating a lot recently, and I have discussed about this in my book, Gods or Aliens, question mark. Question mark is important. Then some people think that gods were ancient aliens or ancient ordinary human beings who were deified in later times. So they don't know the difference between devas and asuras. So anybody who looks more powerful than human beings is a god, including Ravana, which is not exactly a fact. So we need to explain the difference between devas and asuras, which is a major point. Then there is another big thing. I've seen a lot of articles, blogs, and Indology books and like that talk about women in Ramayana in a bad way. So we need to analyze the personalities of the three wives of Dasharat, for example, Kausalya, Kaikeyi, and Sumitra, who are, very representative and easily disprove these theories from the go, because Kausalya was very Brahminical. She was doing all the religious duties in the house. We see the Ramayana starts and we see Kausalya performing the yaga, the homa, and doing all the pujas, all the religious duties of the house. We see the Ramayana starts and we see Kausalya performing the yaga, the homa, and doing all the pujas, all the religious duties of the house. This means she had the religious power. She was not depending on anybody else to do the religious duties. She was the one who was in charge. Kaikeyi was a better warrior than Dasharat, because we know from the story, how Kaikeyi got the promise of the boon, because Dasharat had been overwhelmed by the enemies in the battle, on the battlefield, when Kaikeyi saw that, she jumped on her own chariot. She went there. She beat all the bad people, all the enemies, defeated everyone, picked up the king and drove him back to the city. So if she was not a better warrior than Dasharat, she wouldn't have been able to do that. So, okay, Sumitra was, happy to be the mother and, having a very simple life. Why not? So we have three options, so you could be either one of them, whatever you wanted to be, because these three women demonstrated that. So what's the problem? Sita also is very much misunderstood. Shurpanaka even worse. Taraka even worse. Then we have the Anasuya and Ahalya, Tara, Mandodari, and Sarama and Trijata, respectively, the wife and daughter of Vibhishana. Then we have the story of Sabari also. So these are all, great women in the Ramayana that the example that we can understand from their story, great doesn't mean good. They're not all good. Of course, Shurpanaka was very aggressive, and she got, wounded because she tried to eat Sita. It's not that Rama and Lakshmana were mocking her, because she wanted to, she was in love with Rama. No, she tried to eat Sita. It's a bit different, not exactly the same thing. Then we go on, see, the same field. Some people think that Brahmastra was an ordinary nuclear weapon, and Vimanas were ordinary airplanes. So we have a big thread of books and presentations and by people who are still now repeating that the Brahmastra, Mohenjo-daro was destroyed by the nuclear explosion. Nuclear explosion is supposed to vitrify the bricks. And you go and see any picture of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, there is no vitrification of bricks whatsoever. So why they say that, because one guy started it, in the logic of the ancient aliens from the Bible, and that they had to go after it. Okay. Then some people say that itihasas, Puranas, etc. are false or invented. Their fables are fictional stories with ordinary characters. This is another big thing that we need to address, because, even some Hindus are a bit confused about that. Another problem is that many people think that Hinduism supports a bad medicine system, that Ayurvedic medicine is about weird herbal pills and cow urine. There is no better knowledge of medicine than that, which we need to work on it. Then fanatical allegiance and obedience, blind faith and unquestionable dogma, which is definitely not in the Shastra. Then many people think that legislation has been going on in India until now to protect the privileges of the Brahmins, which is exactly the opposite. The privileges of the Brahmins are just religious privileges, and if some people give them money, that's not something that is enforced by any law. So then another problem is the opposition of straightforward truthfulness versus hypocrisy. There is this famous saying, Satyam Bruyat Priyam Bruyat, which, Priyam, but still Satyam. Sorry. Doesn't mean that because someone is not going to accept the truth, we need to tell them nice lies. No, that is not the meaning of the saying. Then misconceptions about worship and rituals, otherworldliness, sometimes this, so-called mystic, which is not exactly mystic, and theory without practice is okay. This is another big misconception. It's just theory, okay. Then another problem is the personality cult of gurus. People don't understand what guru means. So they have, entertaining gurus and guru superstar versus what is supposed to be the guru seva. Guru seva is a different thing. Then again, misconceptions about yoga, meditation, and mysticism. There's a lot of misconceptions there. Then registered trademarks. Like some people, they have their own brands of yoga. They put the trademark, so they own that, whatever it is. I don't know, they call it. Anyway. Then we need to discuss about the reconstruction of destroyed temples and the government control over temples. This is another big, chapter of misconceptions. Then we need to discuss about misconception about ISKCON, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya. We can say a lot about that. And another weird thing that I heard is the expression Dalit Rishis, such as Vyasa, Valmiki, but they were not Dalits. The problem is that some people are so stuck into the caste mentality that when they realize that Vyasa was the born from extramarital connection of a fisherman woman, then they say, okay, he was a Dalit. No, it was not a Dalit, because the fact, the Chandalas were not classified by birth. So Vyasa by birth had the qualities of a rishi, not the qualities of a Chandala. Of course, people who are born in Chandala families and communities, they tend to follow the same values and mentality of the place they were born into. But that doesn't mean it has to be like that. Because we go back to the idea of Shuddhi, Prayaschitta, Vrata, and Diksha. Anybody could become anything. Valmiki, was actually a highway robber and a hunter for a long time. So he was born and thinking, okay, this is life, okay, there's nothing else in life. But then he changed, he became a rishi in the same lifetime. They didn't have to be reborn. So there was no point, there is no Dalit Rishi. It's like saying, dry water. Because either you are a Chandala or you are a Rishi. You cannot be a Chandala Rishi. Because it's based on qualities. Also, we have the point that not many people know about the Rishikas. The Rishikas are female Rishis. And, usually people think that the Rishikas are the wives of the Rishis. Okay. Not really. The Rishikas were Rishis by their own right. Then we have other misconceptions about impersonalism versus personalism. And about the definition of devas, rather, who are called demigods, which is another thing that we need to clarify because it's dangerous. So this is, rejecting the word, oops, where is it? Okay. This is the, okay. Rejecting the world as false, illusory and false. That is also not the idea of the genuine Advaita. Yeah. So the world is not an useless illusion. It's not false in the sense that it doesn't exist. It's the world is, material world is temporary, but it exists temporarily in transformation. The genuine Advaita is not teaching that the world doesn't have any value. So this is another interesting point to clarify with people. So I hope I have also another idea that came to my mind after preparing the slides is that many people think that Krishna was an immoral person. This is another classic. So if you have any other ideas, I was planning to write something like in the form of a booklet or something. And actually this idea of the misconceptions about Hinduism was given to me by this Kalyan Vishwanathji, who is the director of the Hindu University of America. So I hope I've not been too politically incorrect. But I'm usually not politically correct. I'm sorry. It's not my specialty. But if there are any other suggestions, any ideas, I would be happy to.
Mataji,
please.
I would not be adding to your knowledge because I don't have an iota of what you have. But
okay. Okay, thanks.
Just some points, because maybe just to clarify a little bit more.
Please.
Which would be, of course, in your repertoire, but just touching upon them, because these are things which I think about a lot. And, for example, one is, you mentioned a very relevant point about the Gotra and the Kula.
Yes.
And you mentioned that the Kula has nothing to do with the DNA.
Yeah.
So then I thought that Gotra probably is what has to do with DNA. And that's why we have the 8 main Gotras, and, and that's why we don't intermarry, because of the possible distortion of the genetic structures.
Yes. DNA actually, it's not that the Ayurveda and the Vedic system doesn't recognize the value of DNA.
Yeah,
DNA is actually there.
In breeding in Gotra, I will probably need to. Difficulties like the Egyptian Ptolemy's children had the issues because they married among themselves.
Yeah, not only actually, even worse, in the Middle Ages, we see the families of the royal families of Europe. They're like
same problem, yes, same as Ptolemy's in Egypt, yes.
Yeah, much worse.
Exactly the same situation. So eventually, Cleopatra's brother was deaf and dumb and things like that. Yeah. And then another was that, of course, again, just kind of explaining what I think, not adding to what we call, in the Puranic time also, the kings were either elected or they had to fight their, they had to prove their.
Yes. We can elaborate on that. Yeah.
Their prowess and things like that, as a warrior or as a gentleman and as a person of values, high values, and and a person who understood the dharma.
Yeah.
Again, not religion, but dharma. So they used to choose them. And Krishna himself, interestingly, never became a samrat, even though in Dwarka, we call him Raja Dhiraj. But the truth is that he installed his father as the king, and he never installed himself as
grandfather.
Yes, grandfather. Sorry. So, he was, and also when he was in Mathura, he started a system of Samantvad, or what you might call oligarchy of the wise men.
Yeah.
Right? Because after he decimated Kans, he did not want someone to be, a dynastic kind of rule, but even if there was a king, then it was supported by a set of Samantas. So he introduced the Samantavad also in in a very positive way, where it was not so much about the power the Samanta had, but it is the wisdom that the king would draw upon from them.
Yes.
So that was one very important point. And then that was about the role of king, and I was thinking about Chanakya when you said about Brahmins above the king, because I think one of the important things is somewhere in some of the Purans it is mentioned when the king leaves the path of dharma, then the nature also goes against the kingdom, and
definitely, yes.
Then the rains don't happen on time, and the disease come, and the crops fail and things like that. And when the king is righteous, then prosperity comes in. And when I was watching the picture, the film Lion King, it reminded me of the whole thing exactly.
Which film is that? Sorry.
Lion King.
Lion King.
Yeah, the famous film, and also the famous Broadway show, which I saw in Broadway also 2 times.
No, I didn't see. I didn't hear. So I'm going to check it out.
If you see Lion King, you will see when the hyenas took over
because the Lion King. Okay.
Lion King.
Yeah. Yes. That yes.
So, you can see this. The entire philosophy of a Dharma Parayan king and a rule of crooks. Usurpers, and how the same forest became completely devastated and it became barren.
Yeah.
And then when his son Mufasa comes back and he is the righteous king, and then everything becomes green, and the earth begins to become bountiful.
Actually, this idea, the Lion King, they got from the cycle of Arthur. The cycle of the Graal. Mm-hmm. The Fisher King is exactly that point.
Yeah.
Exactly that point.
Then you mentioned about Buddhism, and Buddhism actually draws heavily upon Vedism. I think the fundamental difference that Buddha tried to, you can tell it better, but what I understood I'm saying, because from doing Vipassana and listening to Goenkaji, I learned what I did. Mm-hmm. And I am essentially anti-Buddhist because they are anti-Sanatana. But in general, the fundamental difference I saw was that Buddha did not believe in Atma in the sense we do, and that was probably the fundamental difference. Otherwise, everything else he has drawn upon Vedism. In fact, Goenkaji in one of his speeches also said that Buddhism was floated as a religion nearly 150 years after Buddha died.
Exactly.
And Ashoka was the main driver because he had so much power and people were so afraid of him. So if he sent his own son as emissary, this is my interpretation, if he sent his own son and daughter as emissary, every king knew that if Mahendra is coming here, or what was her daughter's name? Sanghamitra, if she's coming, then either it's a religion or you get finished, because Ashoka was,
yeah.
I mean, it is depicted in our history books. I read a book by Charles Allen, who had done 20 years research on Ashoka alone, and the book is named Emperor Ashoka the Emperor. In this, he has painted the real picture of Ashoka. He was a cruel man. And
he was not a nice guy.
He was murderous, and totally ruthless. So I won't make it long, but what I'm generally saying is that interestingly, the Buddhists in India are so much against Hinduism and they want to say everything against it. But as I was traveling in Bhutan, the Buddhists keep on telling us, this comes from Hindu, this comes from Hindu. Yeah. They don't Hinduism, but this comes from Hindu, this comes from Hindu, and so on. So, they don't see it with so much of antagonism as the Indian Buddhists do, because they probably understand that even the person who took Buddhism to Bhutan was actually a Brahmin who became Buddhist. So they probably understand that. Then we were talking about science versus religion. So as a matter of fact, we had the system of the yantra, mantra, and tantra. So tantra was, I don't know exactly, but I think referred to a system of things. And yantra was referring to a mechanism, and mantra was the power method of invoking powers, which are all pervading, more or less. That's what I thought. So they were very good at making a lot of yantra, and Rishi Kanad made the flying devices, and he also invented a lot of other things, and he was the man who also defined at that time what seems to approximate very closely an atom. So,
yeah, this is a different meaning of yantra. Actually, that is okay. Yantra, in the tantric sense, is a vehicle for the deity.
Yeah, in tantric sense, yes, because we have the Lakshmi and all those tantras.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we worship on them, and there's a system of the writing the mantra around it and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
But yes, it is true. It is true that there are also yantra is a big field of mechanical science.
Yeah, devices or mechanics or whatever. And then another thing was that because we discussed about the monotheism, henotheism, and polytheism, then the Shaiv, the Shakt, and the Vaishnavas or the Advaitvadis. And on the other side, we have the Smarts, who Smartism is accepting a system of gods, which are actually manifested. They also understand it manifested the same Brahma, but they worship it in
it is the Pancha Upasana introduced by Adi Shankar that establishes 5 main personalities of God that should be worshipped by everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that comes from there, and then so these are things which, and you know, my German friend, because I worked for a very long time with German company. Before that, I was running their collaboration. So they were very curious about Hinduism.
Excellent.
So, and they used to talk to me about casteism and things like that. And then I used to try to explain. I hadn't read anything more or less at all at that time. I have not read much even now, but a little more than that. But I used to tell them at that time this thing, and then they had this question about 330 million gods and so on.
Yeah.
So I used to tell them that this could have many meanings. First of all, if we say that 33 kotis, which means koti also means 10 million, and koti also means type. So we have the Vasur and various kinds, however. So they make matrikas and all put together are 33, I think.
Yeah.
So the aspects, but as you rightly said, I mean, they're aspects of the same God. You can see them in 33 form types of categories, or you can see in 330 million types of gods, or you can, and I also told him that it is also possible, I don't know, but this is just a conjecture and could be totally wrong, that it is possible that at that time, because Hindus believed that the life depends not on just Earth, because Earth itself, and because it's the whole system, the universe, which is in a balance. For example, if the Venus was to leave its orbit today, Earth will also have to leave its orbit, because we are in a gravitational field which is balancing each other. So if one planet goes out of the solar system, the other planets will collapse. They will lose their orbits also. There will be no life. So we are depending, and similarly, if Sun loses its trajectory in the Milky Way, then again the same result will happen, because it will begin to collapse, or it will collide into some other star, or whatever will happen, and finally we will be annihilated. So it could be possible that the Hindus thought of 330 million celestial bodies that keep the balance of Earth. That was my conjecture. It's not written anywhere. Just a thought. So I used to tell them in 3 ways what is this 330 million secret.
No, actually, it's a very good perspective. What I'm thinking is that, for example, in several parts of the Shastra, it is said that the avatars of God are innumerable, like the waves of the ocean.
Yeah.
So all the devas are actually avatars in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are Swamsa avatars, Vibhinamsa avatar, Shakti Avatar. In the Bhakti literature, we find that all the categories and everything. We don't need to put the asuras in the number. We already have unlimited numbers of avatars and, you know, manifestations of avatars. Like, for example, we have, you know, Krishna, that, you know, Krishna is extremely popular thanks to you know, ISKCON and Gaudiya Math.
Yeah.
And still there are innumerable forms of Krishna. We had the Dwarkadisha, Dwarka Rajadiraj. Then we have the Shyamasundar, Vrajasundar. We have all the different.
And Bhakya Bihari and so many.
You know, that's innumerable, but it's not that they're different or competition. The problem, the focus of the misconception is that people think they're in competition.
No, they are not.
That is the main point. If they understand that all, I think that the definition of Swamsa Vibhinnamsa are very illuminating, because Amsa means limb of the body. So all these devas are limbs of the body of God.
Oh, yes.
So we are also limbs in a lesser sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So this vision, you know, if people get this actual perspective, it will immediately vanquish the misconception that there are, you know, 33 crores of gods and not even one is making oxygen. But,
that is nonsense. That is pure nonsense.
Exactly. No, but this nonsense is coming from something.
Yes, of course.
From that perception of the situation.
There was one more thing.
They're very good points, Rakeshji. You want to give some more?
People used to ask me, yes, people used to ask me that Hinduism believes that God is in everything. So I said, yes, God is in everything.
Exactly.
So they used to ask me, how do you see God in this stone, this floor, this fork, this
This reminds me of Hiranyakashipu a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You know the story of Nrsimha? Hiranyakashipu asked the same questions.
Yeah. So, you know, I used to tell them in a very simple way. There was a German friend of mine who was very, very intellectual, but he claimed that he was agnostic, not, you know, something like that. And he said that, then he used to ask me, what is your God? And this and that. So I was telling him sometime, you know, broadly what Brahm means, what we think of Brahm and things like that, and the primordial material and primordial stuff, whatever you may like to call it. And then I said, what do you think? Who created or how the universe was created? And he said that, okay, there's some superpower. So I said, yes. So you call him superpower.
You call it superpower. That's it.
So you can call him what you like. And I said, it is Vasa for you, it's water for me, it's aqua for Italians, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter. But the point is, I said that if you believe, and if we believe that there was something from which the universe was created, then that something must be in everything. If you have sodium chloride, it must have sodium and chlorine. Come on. So if you can't make something out of something else in which there's no element of that. So therefore, if there was Brahm and everything was created from that, then everything contains a part of it. So it's in everything. It's obvious. It is purely scientific.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be in everything. Otherwise, how would you, I mean, you can't make something out of something, and that thing will not be, if I make a wooden table, there has to be wood in it. Come on. So, you know, those were some of the things which I thought I would share with you, because many times people are so dumb that they don't understand.
We actually went past almost the 2 hours, but it's okay. We can go on. I have no problem. I'm very happy. Yeah. Devala had to go, and also Virabhadra had to go, but
no, it's okay. I'm also nearly finished, but coming to Islamic law about not marrying another person's wife,